Yeah, I have your stuff out there. Okay. Good. Well, how are we doing? We got about 1 minute, don't we? Well, you guys are all the brave ones. Are the crazy ones?
And they're listening. They're about 2 minutes away. I'm gonna put that on.
Yeah, if you want to stick it like right here,
Yeah.
it might pick it up a little bit better.
Yeah.
Can we buy the book from you or?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're $500
Okay. I was gonna give you 6.
just for the first 3 people, and then everybody else is free.
Sounds good to me. Looks like somebody's already bought one and
Yep, yeah, great. There's 5.
she's buying one, so I'm
Awesome.
free.
You're free.
When is your book coming out?
Now, what?
It'll be later on this spring, summer. Oh, hey, hello. Now you can hear me.
So when you say your book,
Will you give it to the beautiful redhead right there?
when you say your book, what's going to be different?
What's that?
What's your going to book be about?
So my book is a lot different. It has, so when I sat down with Harvest Right and we went over their book, and I was talking with the owner, and we was talking about the way I teach and some of the things that I include that are the things that are missing from a lot of the cookbooks. He goes, will you do our second volume? So they're secrets unless you come to the class. No. There's a lot of little tidbits that really make it. This is a great cookbook, by the way, especially if you're just starting out. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but a few more. Yeah, it'll be more comprehensive, different recipes. There's a little bit more details. This is a cookbook it's pretty general, has great information in it. My cookbook is a little bit more detailed. So it gets into more of the preps and how to prep. And, you know, if you're doing particular things, you should slice your meat this way. And then, you know, do the little things that make all the difference. This book, for example, and we'll get started, I guess, in a minute, but I'll give you this one tip and then we'll get started. But this book, it teaches you how to determine how much water to put back in, and that is weigh your trays before and then weigh your trays after. And then the difference is how much water. Well, I don't do that. Math wasn't my strong suit. Even though I have a computer science degree, math I struggled, right? And at my age, I can't remember all that trigonometry that I had back in college. So what I do, and this is a typical of one of the tips that I put in my book, is I don't do all the weighing, and I don't keep a journal. What I do is I weigh the water, or I measure the water that comes out on the defrost, because that's all the water you took out of your food. And I divide that by how many bags, right? So if I get 12 bags of food, I got 12 cups of water, how much water goes back in the food? A cup. I mean, I can do that, right?
I can do that.
So, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's, you know. So there are things like that makes your life easier that I put in my cookbook that really make all the difference on how to be successful. So you can look for that, you know, later on this spring and summer. All right, Celeste, Darren's cookbook. Yeah. Nope. Should I have a contest? I should have a contest. So, all right, let's get started.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to Darren. Having him come tonight. And the 125th day of December. We're still here. Thanks for braving the snow tonight and joining us. Our expert here on freeze drying and Wasatch Freeze Dry, we're really excited to have him again and share his knowledge about how to freeze dry meats. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let me grab my little thing here. So, yeah, welcome tonight because I have a flashback. The last time I was here, same thing. You guys remember, right? We had a lot of people that wanted to come to the class, and then all of a sudden this blizzard hit, and then we ended up with all the special people. All right, but welcome. We do want to thank Food Storage Depot, and I appreciate them for letting us come. They have the best people come and do the great classes. So we've come ourselves, and we've learned a lot in other types of classes. And so having a facility and people that are dedicated to the things that we all believe in is awesome. So so we definitely want to support them. One thing that we're going to talk about today is we're going to be talking about our meats class. So let's kind of get into that right now. And so let me introduce kind of Wasatch Freeze Dried, because we're evolving. So we are getting into manufacturing food. So we do freeze dried food, snacks, and candies. We also are certified Harvest Right technicians, and we are the only, we have 2 technicians, the only home service certified technicians in the world. So I'm rare, medium rare. So we're actually lucky because, like you, I was a user and I was having some problems with my machines, and I went to Harvest Right and said, hey, we really need to do this. Because has anybody taken their machine into Harvest Right? They're heavy, aren't they? And it's difficult. So, yep. But you're working now, right?
Yes,
How'd that happen?
I was taking an herb class. Can I just stand up for a second? There's nobody more dedicated to freeze drying than I was. I was so excited to get my freeze dryer. This is 2 years ago at the same time that Darren got his, relatively. And I began to have serious problems. It would not achieve vacuum. And so I did not know what to do. I tried everything, 8 trips up there. Now, the difference has been that it was not just me. This go around, Darren came between me and Harvest Right. So because Harvest Right does not have, they've got a great idea. They do not have good customer service. So it's not working. So for 2 years, so for 2 years, I did not know what to do because I've got a huge garden orchard. I mean, I'm extremely dedicated to this because I've read about what's coming. All right. So I was taking an herb class in Lehigh, and in that herb class taught by Preparedness people, they brought up Darren. And I said, really? And I had a dear friend, I talked into getting a Harvest Right. Said, Mary, freeze drying is the only way to go. You have to do this. We're in this together. So she spends $3,000, gets a freeze dryer, and right out of the gate, it will not work. Not even one time. She said, I'm so mad, I want to throw it right through Harvest Right's window. Well, then I heard about Darren, and I told Mary. So she got Darren up there, and lo and behold, she has been a changed woman. So when this was going on, I thought to myself, I said, okay, I need to get another freeze dryer. So Darren brought it down. It didn't work. Not a cheap vacuum. He came, got it, tested it up at Harvard, brought me back a new model and said, Catherine, this is going to work. And I am on my 10th load now. And you guys, I'm so excited. I'm going to get a second freeze dryer, hopefully by fall time. But that is just the wonderful experience. And Darren has been the difference. Like my brother said, it's not just us dealing with Harvest Right. Darren deals with them. And it's been a different story.
And I am bigger than most of them. So, you know, they usually are very kind to me. So, well, thank you for that. I give you the $20 afterwards, that paid announcement. But yes, we do. We definitely, and I think, I see a lot of you. How many people have I fixed their machines here? A lot. And one on the way. So yeah, that's what we do. And so you're actually very fortunate. We're all fortunate to be able to have that ability here. And we love coming out and working with you and making sure that you're successful, because we know harder times are coming. So having our freeze dryers, and those of you that are freeze dryers, you're avid freeze dryers, right? You love it, just like I do. So, all right, moving on. So my website is, if you care to go see, is washashfreezedry.com. We have a lot of our products out there. If you have friends and neighbors that want a freeze dryer, we will sell you one right here. So there's a desk in there with a point of sale system. So if you are interested in a freeze dryer, talk to Celeste or any of the staff here. And also with that, if you do purchase a freeze dryer, right up here on top, $175, I will go out, pick it up. I will bring it to your home. We'll get it set up. We'll make sure it's working, and we'll do a mini class. And so we'll go through and we'll discuss what types of foods you want to freeze dry. We'll get your first batch going, and we'll do a lot of things to get you going. We'll go through the menu system and ensure that you're totally comfortable with the machine. So, and that's an added service that we provide. We also provide, as Harvest Right Partners, a service contracts. So for $200, we will cover all service for the 2 years. So your warranty for your machine is 1 year for the machine and the pump, and then 3 years for the coolant system. So for $200, we will give you a service contract to handle all the service, excluding parts, for that 2 years. So, or for 2 years. So if you're out of warranty and your machine is going, might needing some service for 2 years, give us a call and we'll cover you for 2 years, excluding parts. Okay, so we talked about that. Now, one thing in my classes, when I'm out and about and I discover things, and a lot of the stories I bring up in my classes. Well, I was talking to one of my friends, and she was telling me about a product that she discovered, and I want to have her come up today. Deb, why don't you come on up? And I want her to share with you just 5 minutes on something that I am now using myself. So I'll give her this one.
Put it in the next screen.
What's that?
Now you're
Okay. So I'll let Deb introduce herself, and she'll give you just a brief overview of this product, which I really like. I've started implementing it myself in my own personal freeze drying food storage.
Okay, so I'm Deb.
This is forward and back.
Okay,
And
I'm a
here's-
crazy food dryer like you guys are. My freeze dryer never turns off unless I'm at home or not home. And so I kept trying all these different things. And I'd do a little of this and a little of that. And my friends would say, oh, I tried this. And I'd go do that and I'd go do this. And pretty soon I had all this food. I didn't know how to store it, where to put it, how much I had, how to rehydrate it. And I just thought, I've got to get better organized. And so I found a product called Tote Scan. And Tote Scan is a simple label system. So for those of you that don't know what a QR code is, this is what it looks like. I put everything in a storage bin. You could put it in boxes. I just worry about it getting wet, so I put it in these kind of bins. And I write on it for my own purpose. I can see what it is if I don't want to go to my phone. But I take my phone and take this program, which is free. The program is free. You can get it in your app store. You can get it for Android, and you can get it for Apple, iPhone. And when you bring it up, all you do is you buy the labels from them, okay? And I'm going to give you a card tonight, so if you decide you want to do it, you can get 10% off of the labels. They're cheap. You can get 50 labels for $3 if you print them at home, or $6 if they mail them to you. And you just start putting things in the bin. Now, I'm kind of anal. I like things organized. So I have boxes that are, these are soups, these are fruits, these are vegetables, these are dairy, okay? I also have a lot of home storage from the olden days in number 10 cans. And I didn't want to have to put labels on all those cans. So I just took labels and put them on a little sheet and labeled what they were. And when I take away or add to this, I scan the tag. It stays right by my cans. And when I'm done, and I'm going to show you a couple of screens how easy it is, but when I'm done, I get a nice printed inventory of everything I have. And I added one column that tells me, okay, if I want to make this easy, and let's say I'm going for 6 months of storage, and I want 7 soups so that I only have 1 soup every day for lunch for a week, okay? So I would need 24 soups, 7 of them for 6 months. I just put a little formula in my column that says, you have 22, you need 2 more of this one. I have 13 of this one, I need this many of that one. And now my freeze drying has become focused. I know what I need, I know what I have, and I know how long it's gonna last, and I know where it is. And so that's what this tote scan is about. So where did I set the little thing down? Let's just go through a couple of screens real quick. When you bring it up, these, I don't have a pointer, but on this side, these are the things that are assigned to you as QR codes when you buy them. They will know that you bought them on your account, and it'll put them in for you, and they're all untitled. So as I get ready to use my phone, I scan this, it brings up that number, and I have a place that I can then say, this is green beans, this is carrots, this is soups, and it might be multiple soups, and I can track each kind of soup. On the next side is your categories. So you can make this as easy or as complicated as you want it to be. I did all my number 10 cans as one category. But in that category, if I could show you, I would have sliced apples, carrots, rice, barley, beans, okay, of all kinds. And so they all fit in one category. And we do that for search purposes. So you can do every item or different. I did my buckets separate, my canned goods separate. And this program allows you to scan this little bar and it will enter it for you. And you can even put a picture of the label in, which is kind of fun because I'm a visual person. All right, so once you get an item in, then there will be, if you go to that item, there's a little edit button. And you can see it says there's a quantity of 9 and a plus and a minus. Can't get much easier than that. So if I go down to the storage room and I take 5 up and put them in the pantry, I hit the minus button 5 times and it keeps my tally. If I go to the grocery store and I think, oh my gosh, I was going to make soup and I can't remember if I'm out of this or that, I'm at the grocery store on my phone and I pull up my little scan thing and I go, oh, I got plenty of that, but I do need this. And so it's easier for my grocery list as well. And when I come home with it, I hit the plus sign and it bumps it up. And it's really that easy, you guys. You can make it more comprehensive if you want to, but basically it's just a system that you can throw whatever you want in the bin, label the bin, and then the program's going to tell you what's in each bin. Okay, so questions?
What tells you the location?
So all of mine say in the basement. This program actually was done for people that wanted to move. And they had all these boxes and they could assign it to the bedroom or the kitchen or the bathroom or whatever. Mine, I just all have in the basement, and I have my bins stacked, soups, vegetables, and I can see physically if I want to what they are. But you can also search. So when you're on the phone and you're searching for beans, you have a place in there that you could put notes or location. You could change the location to say This one's in the downstairs garage. This one is in my food storage room. This one's under the porch. That's about as specific as you can get. But it has not been hard for me to find the boxes because I do have them still organized by soup, vegetables, fruits. And that's how I do it. So, any other questions? Darren, do you have questions?
No. I just know that.
I'm- Okay. So
Can you
for
repeat that?
$6, you get 50 labels.
Just how many labels do you get?
Yep. So $6 gets you 50 labels if you are going to have them mailed. If you're going to print them, I print them on sticky paper that you can buy at an office supply store and then cut my own. And that's a little bit of work, but it's $3 for 50. Okay. And then it would be 10% off. So I did bring cards tonight with the discount code on it so that if you want to do it, you've got the discount code as well. And I'll stay after for more questions so we don't cut into a lot of Darren's time, but any other quick ones right now?
Awesome.
I love that I know exactly what I have now. And it was a job with all of my cans from 1980 something. But in my notes, I also, as I went through that for the first time to get the count, put the dates in the note. So I know that my wheat is still good and I know my beans are still good. So it feels good.
Microphone from you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. I know when I was talking to Deb earlier this week, it's like, I need that because A, I don't want to spend a lot of money. And two, how many people actually know all the things that they have in their food storage? Yeah. I mean, I used to, and then I'd put stuff down there and then I'd use stuff and then, so this is a really simple way, inexpensive so when Deb was telling me about it, it's like, oh, I want to share this. So anyway, if you have any more questions afterwards, I'm sure Deb will be happy to help you with that. So let's talk about protein. How many people have done protein? Meats, all kinds of meats. How many people are hesitant? How many people were hesitant? I'm not hesitant anymore, but yeah, it's one of the things, and everybody's different. So some people, they look at meals, other people, and they're concerned with meals. Other, it's like, I don't know how to do this, that, and the other. But we all can agree on that. If you're in a food shortage situation, you have to have protein. If you want to stay full, carbohydrates aren't going to do it. You're going to need protein. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is a deal that I put together because in my teaching and working with other people, I've always discovered that people would, as you're freeze drying, you would start here and end up over here and forget about everything in the middle. And so when you get, and I did this when I first started, is I said, oh, let's do lasagna, or let's do some pork. And then when I'd get it done, it's like, okay, well, how am I going to use this? I did a bunch of taco meat, and it's like, why did I do that? Because I could have done hamburger and had more flexibility than doing taco meat. So why did I put all this spice in it? So, there's just things that we should think through. So let's work through this real quick. So first, decide on what you want, right? I'm going to do some, and let's say, let's take the taco meat thing. I want to do just some ground beef. And so if you're going to do ground beef, then that kind of tells you how you're going to prepare it, right? It's going to be already ground. So that's not hard, but how much are you going to put on your tray? How much does your tray hold? Does everybody know how many pounds of hamburger you can put on your tray? How much? Two what? You put 2 on yours today? 2 pounds on each tray? Okay. Anybody else do different than that? On a medium? Okay. By volume? You just fill up the tray and you're good. Mhm. Yeah, for a medium machine, I always tell people 4 cups by volume because it's just a good rule of thumb. Once you get into freeze drying a little better and you get more experience, then you can do 2 pounds, 4 pounds. You get a feeling for what your machine will do because your machine, just like your children, they're different. They may look the same, but they're different because I have machines that I can put the exact same things in and at the very same time, the same amount, and they'll finish an hour off of each other. And I don't know why. And I have one machine that it's like Superman. And anyway, so once you get used to your machine, you can start regulating that a little bit better. So decide how you want to prepare it and how you want to is key, because if you take a roast and throw on a tray, it's like, well, how are you going to, if it does freeze dry and it's this big around, what are you going to do with it? You going to soak it for months, right, to get it so you can put it, so you can eat it. So those are the things that, and meats are a little bit easier. Casseroles are a little bit harder when, when deciding on what you want to do. But decide how you want to prepare it. And then also how to best do it on your freeze dryer. Slices of ham, you can stack them on each other just like playing cards, right? You don't have to lay them flat. Or you can lay them like this. Different ways to do it in different types of meats because of density. Some meats are much more dense. Poultry, you could have things touching more than beef because it's not as dense. Make sense? Ground things has a lot more air in them. Therefore, you can stack it up higher. So kind of deciding how much you can put in your machine is important. And then at the end, how am I going to use it, right? Am I going to use it in a stew? Am I going to use it just rehydrate it and fry it up as a stir fry? Or am I going to put it in a casserole? So if you know kind of what you're going to do with it, then that kind of re-engineers itself to answer all these questions. Does that make sense? Any comments on that?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
If you already have pork chops that have been,
We've got people on Zoom. Hold on.
if you already have pork chops that are seasoned and they're cooked, and they're about like this thick, like a
So the question was for you at home. If you have pork chops that are cooked, can you now, let me address one thing first. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't want to go over the edge of the tray. That has nothing to do with freeze drying. That is a guide that people will tell in order to kind of keep you safe. But I consistently go higher than my the edges of my tray, as long as I don't touch the bottom of the shelving unit. So if you look at these orange pads, that's your heating element. You have all that space in between there. So if you wanted to do a steak that was all but that thick and it fit in there without touching your heating element, do it. You're okay. Okay. Just remember that things are dense. And so if you have a really dense piece of meat and you're trying to freeze dry it, it's going to take a long time. And you may have to put it back in, because the thicker it is, the machine has to pull that molecule out of the center. So if that molecule doesn't come out fast enough to the sensors in the machine, then you'll have a moist center and it won't be done. So you'll need to put it back in.
how do you know that?
How do you know that?
Does the machine tell you when it's done, or is it guesswork? I mean, I don't know.
The machine tells you when it's done. And I tell people in the class, when they do things is let the machine do its work. Don't add 12 hours, don't add blah, 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 right? However, there's exceptions to that. If you have a really thick piece of something, whether it's a casserole or meat in this case, it's going to take a lot more time for that molecule to come from the center of that steak and get measured into the sensor system in the machine. And if it's slow enough, the machine will go, oh, there's no more water, so I'm done. And then when you pull it out and you kind of fill it and you have a big 23-ounce ribeye and it's going, well, it's still not done. It's because it was too big and it needed a lot more time. Okay?
Can I ask a question? So when you're cooking.
One second,
Oh,
let's
I'm
get,
sorry, you go ahead. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry, it's okay. So when you're cooking the meats, so would it be more beneficial to slice it up like they're slicing the chicken versus cooking like a larger piece of meat? Because if you want to eat it like you eat a steak, I don't like pick up a big old steak and put it in my mouth. I cut it up into slices. So wouldn't you want to cut it into slices because wouldn't it cook faster?
Yes.
Or freeze dry faster?
Yes and no, and it all depends, right?
Okay.
So, and again, that's where deciding what you're going to do with that meat, right? So if you want to have a steak, then leave it in steak form. If you want to be able to make fajitas or chicken tacos or shrimp fettuccine, and things like that, then you prep it differently. But if you kind of go through and decide what you want to do with that first, then that'll tell you how you need to prep it. So I myself, I don't do steaks, right? I can't see myself in an emergency situation going, okay, where's that ribeye? And I'm going to have me a nice, right? For me, I prepare as if energy is an issue. So I want things that are cooked that will rehydrate fast, that I can heat with a little or as little energy as possible, but have a wonderful meal. That's the whole point of freeze drying, right? Is to have food that you can eat, but that's already prepped. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of explanation, but decide how you want to utilize it, and that should tell you how to prepare it.
It's gonna dry faster by cutting it up anyway.
Absolutely. So the comment was, the smaller things are, and not just small, but consistent in size. So if you have bigger pieces that are all the same size, the machine's going to register the flow of molecules coming out of that meat on a consistent basis and be able to understand that it needs that amount of time. Versus if you have a big piece and then a little piece and a little piece and a big piece, the machine may not capture the right flow of on the sensor side to make sure that the big pieces are done.
What about if you have two trays that are bananas, but then you have a tray that has high liquid? So one's gonna be done faster than the other.
It is. So the question was, if you mix trays and they have different densities and water content, what's going to happen? So you're right. Some things are going to get dry faster than the other. However, and I shouldn't say recommend, but I don't mix a lot of my foods. I do 4 trays of this and 4 trays of that. Rarely do I do, 4 trays of vegetables and then a casserole and then some strip beef. You know what I mean? I don't do that because when I create all of my freeze drying, I'm making lots of it at a time. So if people use things like, I guess, leftovers, which I've never done leftovers, there's never any left, right? So, I've never freeze dried leftovers because there's not any. But does that make sense? I would be careful in mixing foods that are odorous. In other words, don't put onions in with your kiwi. You might discover a new taste in your kiwi. Don't put meat with string beans. because the string beans are going to go really fast. Now you can't over freeze dry something.
Did raspberries. They were done last night at 10 o'clock, and I let them freeze for another 17 hours because I was going to be at work and sleeping.
But you can only take so much water out of them, so
But
you
they
can't.
felt more dry than the last batch I did. The other ones stayed whole, where these were just like falling apart.
More crumbly.
Yeah.
Don't know what to tell you. Other than you only have so much water to take out. It could be the brand, it could be the age of them, it could be they could have been frozen versus fresh, and they're more crumbly if you freeze them, things like that. So, yes,
So what I think I heard you say a couple of minutes ago is if you're not going to actually eat it, it doesn't belong in a freeze dryer. For example, cut all the meat or cut all of the bone off of any meats, like pork chops, for example. Not to say that you'd put the bone in, but there's no reason to have the bone in.
correct. Bones you can't freeze dry, and when I say I can't, is you can't rehydrate bones. It's not going to. Don't put a bone in your bag and expect that bag to be good in 30 years. Yeah, so you're right. Take out the bones. We want to take out the fat. A lot of that that you're not going to eat, remove. So thank you. Anything? Yes,
So
right
do you-
behind you. There's a mic.
Oh, so do you advise people to cook their meat first? So is all the meat cooked? That
Now just
is being
wait.
freeze-dried?
I got a slide for that.
All right.
Okay, coming up. Let's look at that. Look at that. Okay, so raw. Yes.
I just did a batch of like tuna salad, or
Uh-huh.
like tuna salad sandwiches,
Okay.
and it dried and it had a texture like it was crumbly, but it had like a softness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fully cooked, or is that the way it's supposed to be?
Do you use mayo? You use mayonnaise with it?
Well, I just bought it out of the store, and
Okay.
so I don't know what the ingredients was, but that seems to be what happened with my chicken salad too.
So here's when they say you cannot freeze dry oils, or be careful with things with really a significant amount of oil. Mayonnaise is pretty much 90% oil, maybe with a little egg and salt, right? So you will get that type of texture. It will not last 30 years. You can freeze dry it. It'll last depending on how you care for it, as far as if the cooler, the better. But something with that much oil in it, with that much concentration of oil, will not last a long time. And when you open the bag, you'll know if it's bad, if it's rancid. So it will smell. So be careful on that prepared stuff. If you don't know what's in it, ask whoever you bought it from, or the label and whatnot, but be careful on the oils.
Can I add to her question?
Yes, well, here it
I
comes.
did a bag of frozen cherries,
Uh-huh.
and I ran it for like almost 40 hours, but then they came out kind of sticky, like she was saying. They were kind of like dried, like the other dryer, not freeze dried, dehydrated.
Dehydrated, yeah.
And so I didn't know if they were done, but I was just like, well, I'm not going to keep running the machine.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know if they were done or not. But
Things with a lot of fiber and sugar in them, for example, bananas, pineapple, fresh pineapple. Those things you can go 40 hours and you'll feel like they're not done, because that sugar just has a hard time releasing that moisture. So certain things like that will take a long time, and those are what I call the hard foods. And even bananas, when they're dry, you won't snap them ever. Maybe a little bit, but they are pretty fibrous, and with all the sugar in it, they don't snap. Yeah, back here.
I cheated on blueberries and grapes. They said don't do those because they don't work well. I freeze dried them for the cycle, and then I put them in my dehydrator to finish them, because I figured, why keep burning up all that energy when I can just throw them in? I've got the basic, and then just boil the water out.
No, you're right. And we'll get back to the meats here in a second, but let me answer that. You're absolutely correct. There's some of those fruits, skinned fruits, are very difficult because it's like having a piece of plastic around that food. And unless you break that seal, cut the grapes in half, which they still, because of their content, won't get crunchy. They will be more like raisins.
Does that mean they're done though?
They will last. They will last. You want to make sure they're absolutely dry, but they still will be, flexible. Over here, and then over to you, Deb.
I was just going to comment that cutting them can be effective, and you just mentioned that. So,
Okay,
like grapes and stuff.
perfect.
So if you know what a meat tenderizer is with all the prongs that come out, that is the best thing I've ever found for blueberries. It doesn't smash them, but you just fill your tray and just hit that all the way down and back up. Takes 5 seconds, and you've got 3 or 4 holes in those blueberries, and they dry great for me.
Now, what is the device that you used again?
It's a meat tenderizer. So it's circular. No, it's circular, and it has prongs that come out. Lots of prongs that come out. They're like little spikes. Just push down, and it doesn't crush the berries, but it puts holes in the
I
berries.
have a lot of like needles.
Right. And that would work for like grapes too?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe cherries as well. And should taste make it so hot.
Yeah. All right, so let's raw versus cooked. Has anybody done raw meat? Raw meat? You guys have done raw meat as well. What's your experience?
I did them for my neighbor for dog.
Dog treats? Okay.
And it was fine.
The dogs still live? Okay. Perfect. What about you guys? I know you guys have done quite a bit of raw meat.
Yeah, we had a little difficulty in the rehydration system, but we had a little problem with the rehydrating, but came out all right.
Okay, well let's talk about that. So the pros and cons here. So myself, I don't do raw meat, and I do that for a reason. One is, again, if I'm in an emergency situation or I'm having to use my food storage, I want that cooked because I want to have it ready to eat. And if it's cooked, but freeze dried, you could eat it like a cracker if it was a piece of steak. You'd need to drink some water with that, but it would be fine. If it's raw, you don't want to be eating the raw meat because of our nice little friend down here, salmonella. The cooking process kills a lot of that bacteria. The freeze dryer process will not kill anything. It will not kill bacteria, mold, viruses. And so whatever you're putting in the bag, you're going to have when you open that bag, if not more, if it was spores or something. So for that reason, I cook everything because I want it ready to go, and it also renders the fat. So we talked about the oils. Well, in meat it has fat too. So you can only cut off and trim so much fat. So if you render that fat through cooking, then a lot of those oils are coming out, and your longevity will be increased, and it'll be ready to eat, and all you have to do is really hydrate it and warm it up.
Okay, question. So like if you're doing a bunch of ground beef, would you recommend, because of that very thing, that maybe I'm thinking about this, that I would just cook it and then I would even put it in a sieve and rinse it to get the fat off so that it would freeze dry more, successfully for long term. And then in that state, lay it in the trays and freeze dry.
I've heard of that, and a lot of people say I rinse my meat. For me, it's like there goes the flavor, and now you just have protein. I want the flavor. So if you use a good quality ground beef and you cook it well, and then you drain the oil off of it. I usually use 90%, 97%. So when you cook it, there's not a lot of fat in it. It's lean.
Where do you get yours at?
I get the
Good quality.
organic meat out of Costco. The 3 big packages, I think they're like $20. And that's what I use. And you get hardly any renderings out of it all. So I'll put it on a paper towel and pat it dry, let it sit, and then I'll bag it up. And that's what I do. Yes.
What about something like salmon that's pretty fatty? Salmon that's pretty fatty.
Same thing. I'll cook it, and then I'll
You just
I'll
pat
bag
it with
up.
paper towels or something.
Yes, and I do not include the skin.
Right.
So, and check it for bones. You don't want the bones in there too. So, if you're using wild caught salmon has a lot of bones in it. So make sure that you got your little bone plucker and you're plucking all the bones out and it's clean. Yes.
We went to Costco the other day and we had to ask for the 10-pound.
The chub?
Not the chub. 10 pounds of the 9730, and we fried it up today, and it was absolutely hardly any fat in it.
Yep.
So
I did it in an electric frying pan that had a deep side on it, and tilted the pan to let the fat run out, and till you could see it. If you kept the meat back a little ways, you could watch the fat run out.
Yep.
And I did it until the fat quit running, and then prepped it for the freeze dryer.
Yep. So on ground beef, just fry it up. And I like the method, tilt your pan while you're cooking it so that it's draining off. Spoon it out, finish cooking. If you're using a less lean or whatnot, and then just put it on a paper towel, pat it, and freeze dry it. Okay?
So
yes.
I just had a question. That announcement that came out that the ranchers, most of them now are using the mRNA shots. Do we know of any place to buy meat that the ranchers are not going to be doing those types of vaccines? I mean, I know all of them get vaccinated with the other kind, but what about this new threat?
So the rancher got the shot or the cow?
The cow.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when you're buying from the store, sadly, you get what you get, right? It's just like the new lettuce and celery that one of our billionaires in this country has come up with, and he's now putting out on the market that has the mRNA technology for vaccines in it. You get what you get.
You could try natural meats in West Jordan. They have a farm, they sell meats and milk.
It's on
That's
56.
where I get it, but they told me they would follow all laws. So
But is it
if
a
it's
law?
required.
Is it
I don't know.
required?
Yeah.
I just wondered if there's a preferred place because I love Costco and usually get all my meat there, but now I'm like, what are they getting at?
Now, by law, they have to put what's in that meat on the label if it's more than 2%. So usually, now obviously that type of thing is probably not more than 2%. So you may never know if it's in there or not. But you have a great answer. Local suppliers, if you're really concerned about it, and talk to them about how they feed their cows, how much grain, how much is grass fed. You know, are they Wagyu and they've got the massaging going on like the Wagyu cows, right? All that stuff. Find out how they treat their animals.
I would think that Carson Meats in Lehigh, they really advertise the grass-fed beef, and I would think, and I've got a friend that raises grass-fed cattle, And so I think that that would be something you could specifically ask them. And you wouldn't maybe, Costco, they couldn't tell you that, but you go to an individual place like that and they could.
Okay. So you folks that know of local suppliers of grass-fed, grass-finished beef, if you want to send me those, I got my card up there. If you want to email them to me, I will post them out on my Facebook site for everybody to research on their own. I won't endorse them, but I can put them out there for people so they know where to go and start asking. Okay? All right. Yes.
So we bought a whole cow, and it probably is 80-20. If we did the hamburger that has more fat, does it just not?
Just want to drain it more, right?
If you do all the procedures you said, does it just not preserve as long as the 97?
The duration of the preservation is not whether it's 80-20 or 97, it's how much fat do you render out of it. So if you cook it well and you do the process that we're talking about here, and then you'll be fine.
So you'll just have to run the machine a little longer, probably to get it dry.
No, the machine's going to run however long. It's the longer you cook it, the more that's going to render, and the more fat that you can render out of that, the better it's going to, and the more the longevity you're going to get out of it. Okay. Yes. Hand that back to her. Will you?
Do you have a tip on how to make bacon bits?
Bacon bits, chop them really small.
No, I mean, as far as getting the fat out, do you cook it first or do you pull the fat off first?
No, you can cook it. Now there is a misnomer out there called a wives' tale or a foul. You can freeze dry bacon. Again, it's the longevity of that bacon is determined on how well you render the fat, and so it may be a couple years. I mean, you may do a pound of bacon, and depending on the quality of the bacon, only get a year out of it. But someone over here, they do the same bacon, but they cook the death out of it, and it lasts for 5 years, 10 years. So everybody's seen the packages of bacon bits at the store, right? A little bit. So that's what you want to mimic. And so you don't want to use big, 1/8-inch slices of bacon and really get those charred up. So you want to chop it. I would do it in a 2-step process. If you want to do bacon bits, is I would cut them in 1/8 of an inch, fry it up really well, drain the fat off. Then I'd do it again, fry it up again, and then get them really crispy, chop them up, put them back in the pan, fry them up again, and see how much fat I can get out of them again, and then freeze dry it. Yes.
There's a wonderful new invention for removing fat from meat, and it's called paper towels.
Paper towels?
You can cook your hamburger, cook your meat, put it out on a paper towel for a few moments. The towel pulls all that grease and stuff, most of it, not all of it, right out, and then you can go and use it.
So will it work on me?
Yes.
You might try sleeping on paper towels.
That's right. Maybe it'll pull the fat out, right? Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. What if you have got already cooked bacon? I've got some access to that. Can I? Do I need to put it back in the pan and try to get more fat out of it? If it's right in that state, it's already been cooked, and then render more out, and then crumble it, and then freeze dry it. How would that work?
Yeah, the better you cook and render, the longer life you're going to add to it.
Okay, so if it's already cooked and I get it within 24 hours and I recook it again, then lay it out. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's not a 24-hour time frame thing.
No, it's not. It's just I'm wondering, I haven't really done that before with already cooked bacon, but it could be cooked longer. So yeah.
If
okay,
you have a
try.
contact with Chuckarama and you're getting all their leftover bacon, let us know. and we'll join you in your pre-cooked bacon, but you're not slipping it in your purse when you go to the buffet,
no,
are
I don't
you?
think so. No.
Okay. Yes.
Because we're talking about raw versus cooked. I don't know that I need this, but anyway, if you're talking about raw versus cooked, we have chickens. Over the summer, we will suddenly have 36 eggs that we need to do something with. Since we do a lot of baking, I freeze dried raw eggs, just mix it up so you don't have a lot of yolk and it's just egg. and then put that in jars with oxygen absorbers. But I understand it has to be cooked. I'm not going to eat it raw. I'm not going to put it in my mouth and consume it that way. Any concerns that you have? Should I be doing that any different?
No, I do raw eggs. That's the one protein that I do raw. Because eggs they do beautiful in the freeze dryer, and there's very little chance of getting something like meat. Meat, poultry is a little bit different when it comes to salmonella than eggs. So yeah, I do eggs like that all the time. Yeah. I think most people do eggs raw.
48 eggs and hard boiled. And 48 eggs hard boiled will give me 4 trays of diced eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just dice them up real small and freeze dry them that way. And I have freeze dried eggs for egg salad sandwiches and things like that.
So yours are cooked though?
Yeah, I cook them. I hard boil them and then just dice them up. But 48 eggs will do 4 trays of eggs diced.
Okay, perfect. Let's go back over here and then over to here.
I have chickens. And so what I do, and when my chickens begin to produce, and my chickens are really well fed, so the egg quality is really there. Anyway, I just take them out of the coop, the eggs. I wash them to get rid of the bacteria. I crack them, make sure there's no shells, and then I pulverize them in the blender and set it down on the trays. When those are freeze dried, it becomes a really fine powder that you can easily bag with an oxygen absorber. To reconstitute it, it is 1 tablespoon of that egg powder. 2 tablespoons of water equals 1 egg. And so if you've got that, you can make eggs with it, omelets with it, all that kind of thing.
Great. All right. Yes.
Does everything you put in the bags or the jar need an oxygen absorber? Or are there some things that don't?
I'm going to say if you're putting it in long-term storage, yes, it does. If you're using it sporadically, and for example, if you have a bag of powdered eggs that you're using and you just want to put it in your kitchen cupboard, you're fine. But if you want to keep it long-term and protect it from any moisture or anything getting into it, then yes, put a oxygen absorber in it. Yes.
What if you're like stir frying something like vegetables and meat and use a little bit of oil? Is that going to create a problem? Like I did fried rice and I did beef bulgogi and some vegetables, and I just fried it in a little bit of olive oil.
So the question was, does cooking with oil, and let's add butter to that, does that cause a no-no in freeze drying? It does not. There's not enough in there to do anything. In fact, when I produce all my food, I use either olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil, or butter. And so when people say, well, you can't freeze dry butter. Yeah, you can't put a cube of butter in there and hope to get buttered powder. Go buy that. You've probably seen it in number 10 cans. There's a different process on how they produce that, but you can't do it with these machines. But just cooking with and using it as a facilitator for cooking and frying, then you're fine. Yes.
Sour cream and cheese. Any problems? I've done both.
No problems with freeze drying butter or sour cream and shredded cheese. So I get the 2 big bags from Costco, the Mexican blend, and that'll fill 2 trays or 4 trays actually, and it works out well. It's the rehydration process is requires a little bit more patience on the cheese.
What I'm doing cheese right now. What is the rehydration process?
So if it's sliced cheese, wet a paper towel. You're the paper towel lady now, so they're your friend when you're freeze drying. Wet a paper towel and layer paper towels and cheese and put it in your fridge overnight, and you'll never know that it was freeze dried. Same thing with the same thing with shredded. A layer of shredded cheese, a wet paper towel, another layer, a wet paper towel. Layer that up, 3 or 4 layers. Put it in your fridge, and it'll be perfect overnight. Yes.
Missed it with the spray bottle.
You can do a spray bottle. Yes. I only have super soakers at home, and it overloads it with water. I don't have a spray bottle, but I can really get that cheese wet. Yes, a spray bottle works as well, and to rehydrate cheese. Yeah.
I don't have it. You can do sour cream and cheese, but if you were to, so when I make cheese, I'm making it with whole milk, so it has the same as it has all the cream as what you would make with butter. So then, what would be the difference of being able to do like the sour cream and the cheese, because you're using the same as what you make butter with? Obviously, it's more cream because you take all the cream when you're making milk.
So the question was, I make my own cheese with whole milk, and there's a high concentration of fat. And so how does that work? It works great.
Well, some cows are more creamy. My cow puts off a lot of cream.
Well, I haven't met your cow, but most cows, the cream, you're okay. If you go to Costco and buy the quart of heavy cream, I've just dumped it in my tray and freeze dried it.
Well, yeah, but that's how you make butter. You take the cream
And then powder it.
You mix the cream until it turns into butter, and then you take the buttermilk off. So why would you be able to freeze dry cream, but you can't freeze dry butter?
Butter there's a different molecular compound in butter. It's not just cream, especially the butter you buy, right?
So what about butter you don't buy?
Butter you make from cream.
Yeah.
So you could probably do that. I don't know if these machines are at the capacity of being able to turn that into a butter powder. So if you do heavy whipping cream that you've bought, for one, it's pasteurized, which means they've killed it, right, with heat. And that's burst a lot of those fat cells. And so when you freeze dry that heavy cream, it'll be kind of like what we talked about. It won't be a powder. It'll kind of be like the sour cream powder. It's just a little, it's not really a powdery, but it's kind of like a dried yogurt, right? It's not going to have a 30-year shelf life. It's, you may get 5 to 10 years out of it. But pasteurization and doing that heat process changes the game.
So you wouldn't want to freeze dry raw milk or raw sour cream or
Sure.
raw cheese?
Sure.
I freeze dried buttermilk. Work perfect.
Yeah.
From raw?
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
buttermilk.
Just know that it'll be different than if you buy it and it's been pasteurized, because that heat process that's killed everything has also changed and broken down the fats and oils as well. So while yours will turn out really well, it just may not have the shelf life as long.
So it just smell bad? That's how you would tell?
Yep. You open the bag, you'll know if it's bad.
How long do you think it would
What
last?
I do with the shelf life is if I know it's going to have a short shelf life, I seal them in mason jars.
Mason jars.
Yeah, and then that way, they're in a different area, and you know that it's short term.
So it all depends. Guernsey, Brown, Holstein. What cow do you have? Jersey. They're all the same. No, the milk duration is all the same, but no.
Online question.
They kick more. We used to have it. Oh yeah.
One for Badarian.
We had to hobble all of our cows growing up because they'd always kick us.
Online question.
Online. Let's go here, and then we'll be right over. Who
Online question.
Oh, online question. There we go.
Okay, so somebody was asking, do you have to fill all the trays when you're using a freeze dryer?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. You can get away with it doing a test here and there, but what happens is the machine could interpret the lack of presence of having a full tray as your machine is done, so prematurely. So I would definitely, if you're doing regular batches, do fill the trays, or at least have something in the tray. Even if you only have 3 trays worth or 4 trays worth, depending on your machine, throw some bread or something on the tray, just so the machine can kind of think that there's something there, and you'll be safe.
Yeah, I have a question. When you rehydrate the heavy cream, will it whip?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Well, if you can whip it, I mean.
Right. Like I rehydrate it and then I put it in my KitchenAid with the whisk on. Will it whip up like it give me whipped cream?
Yeah, you haven't
Sweet.
killed it. So,
Right.
I mean, that's the beauty about a freeze
Yeah,
dryer.
totally.
Is you can, a dehydrator is going to damage a lot of that cellular structure. The freeze dryer, because of the process it uses and pulling out that those moisture molecules, it doesn't damage the cell structure. So therefore, you can easily recreate that when you rehydrate. So.
I have another similar question, and that is, can I make yogurt? Like if I dry some yogurt that's got live cultures in it, can I make yogurt when I rehydrate that yogurt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and
Excellent.
you cannot kill cultures. You can put cheeses and fermented vegetables. For example, we make sauerkraut, and when you rehydrate it, it'll be sauerkraut, and you'll have the same probiotics and things in it that you did before. So that's a beauty. And actually, there's a spot in this book that talks about the fermented foods and things that it doesn't kill. So, yes. Did I just see another hand?
I'll do one. So, can you put in Mylar bags 2 different foods and then seal it?
Give me an
Fruits or
example.
like bananas and raspberries or something like that.
So I put mixed fruits in my
Because I'll end
bags.
up with not enough, and I don't want to waste my bag. So you could
Yeah.
put.
So I buy like 10 pounds of mixed fruit, freeze dry it, and then put it in there for mixed fruit.
Do you do frozen fruit?
Yep. Yeah.
So
I
could
get
you
the
do a
Costco stuff
fruit
all-
with the meat and bag it?
No. Duh.
Yeah, you could do meat if you want.
A friend of mine told me that mice can chew through those modern
Mice.
Yeah, you have them in a food storage, like a place that is a food pantry or something like that you don't go to regularly, and mice can get in it. They will chew through the bags.
I've heard that mice, yeah, they can get in, well, obviously cardboard boxes and bags and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's up to you on how you protect it. I just help you get it into the bag.
So if I have a mixed group of trays and I end up not having enough for a whole bag, I put what I have in the bag and I seal it. And then I put the other in the bag and I seal it. And so I'm using one bag and I know what's in it, but they're not touching each other. They stay separate.
Did you understand that?
So you have 2 bags inside of one, or
No.
1 bag inside of.
One bag, bananas on the bottom, seal it with your bag sealer, steak in the top, seal it.
Yeah. You just put a seal mark right in the middle or wherever you need it. And then it's,
On that same point. So the other day, I was finishing up a load of, I was doing pears and peaches. And so I knew that I had more coming in the next batch. So I had a partial bag, and I don't know if I did this wrong. That's why I'm asking. I opened the bag. It had the oxy absorber in there. I put the rest of the food in. This is like the next day, and then resealed it.
So you started off with a sealed bag. It wasn't quite full.
Right.
You opened it, put
Cut it
more
open,
in it.
and immediately sealed it again.
I would have replaced the oxygen absorber. If you're going to keep that a long term, I would have put a fresh oxygen absorber in it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if you have a bag that you're bringing out of your storage and you've put an oxygen absorber in it, it's used its power to take all the oxygen out of that bag. If you open that up and flood that with oxygen, it may not, and most likely would not, have enough left in it to absorb another bag full. So you definitely want to replace that. Let's go here first and then back.
I actually have a question about that, and somebody mentioned sealing it in jars. So, like, when I open my bag, I'll toss it in a bunch of jars and, like, so should I use new oxygen absorbers in there as well?
So are you using your jars long term, or are they just kind of storage for
Mostly
sporadic use?
mostly they're storage for, like, my kids to grab snacks.
So if you're
they're getting used.
using bottles for snacks like strawberries and just stuff that the kids can eat, I would not waste an oxygen absorber because once you open it the second time, I mean, it's done. So you can put another one back in it, but if child number 2 comes 5 minutes later, it's going to be done.
So is there even any point putting the oxygen absorbers from the bag into the jars?
In our climate here, where it's actually quite dry, other than now, you can leave stuff in a Ziploc bag for weeks, if not months, especially if they're snacks, and they will pretty much maintain. After a while, depending on the type of fruit, they will absorb a little moisture out of the air because everybody's home is different. But I would not, if they're just snacks out there for the kids, I'd just put them in a sealed type jar, and like with a rubber gasket if they're just pull out or whatever, and just leave it at that.
Okay. And then just a follow-up question, sorry about the jars. So I was watching a YouTube video and somebody freeze drying, and she like opened the jar and then put it back on. She had like a jar sealer. Any thoughts on that?
Like a vacuum sealer?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Sealant vac, or
That's great.
what is it? Sealant. You could use this machine to do that if you want. But if
how would that work then?
Yeah.
you just put your jar in there with the lid on it and you turn it on for 90 seconds and it'll seal it back up.
Oh.
Now, I'm watching her going, how do you get the jar in there? So, yeah, you can, and I think some people know this, but you can take out your shelving unit. You take a tray, flip it over, and it's like just having the bottom. You could put jars in there and then turn on your vacuum, and in 90 seconds, it'll suck that down, all the air out of it, and store it for, so like nuts, sometimes you don't use nuts a lot. You bake cookies here or you have a handful there, but they may sit for a month, right? You vacuum seal it and they'll last a lot longer.
With an oxygen absorber?
Nope. Yeah, just seal it, let it suck out the air, and store them. All right, you had a question, and someone else here. You're next. So,
I've had some bad experiences with oxygen absorbers, and it doesn't seem to matter whether I buy the Chinesium ones or buy them, from a reputable outlet. And so I've just adopted the Prepper's motto: 1 is none and 2 is 1. So every bag that I do gets 2 oxygen absorbers just to make sure. And I've actually still had bags not close down on themselves after they're sealed. But I figure that I'd rather spend a little bit of extra and know that I've got a better chance of a seal.
yeah. Well,
Where do I get them? I buy them here at Food Storage Depot, or the Chinesium stuff you can buy from Jeff Bezos, Amazon, but you just don't know for sure, what if I'll be really blunt, you don't know if the iron filings inside are any good or not.
yeah, so let me comment on on that a little bit because you mentioned that sometimes my bags don't. Um, that's not a indicator uh, of whether your oxygen absorbers worked or not. Some of my bags do, some of them don't. It all depends on how I pack it as well and how thick your bag is. If you have a 9 mil or a 7 mil bag and you only fill it half full of like rice, of a rice dish, a 300 cc oxygen absorber may not have enough in it to suck it down, even though it's gotten all of the oxygen. I use 6-inch by 9-inch gusseted Ziploc bags. They're 5 mil bags, and I use a 200 cc oxygen absorber, and it'll suck those down on some flavors, but not on others because of the density. So spaghetti has a lot of air in it. So while it'll get all the air out, it won't have enough left to really suck it down. So if you have something that's more dense, then it'll get that oxygen out because the food's displaced more oxygen, right? And if you take it and like for powders, when I put in my eggs, I will kind of push up and then seal it. So I push a lot of air out of it as I can. So it'll suck those down really well because there's hardly any air in it. So, so just because it didn't suck it down doesn't mean it didn't work. So you're okay. But if you wanted to be sure and make sure that they all do that, then you can use 2 or however method that makes you feel like you're successful, right? So good comment.
Another online question.
Let's go online.
Was one person said he had a difficult time getting the onion smells out of the harvest right. And the next batches he did candy and they have that hint of onion. He says he's even wiped it down with alcohol and still no luck.
So you want to make sure you pre-freeze anything that smells like that. You want to freeze it solid first. If you put a tray of onions that's not pre-frozen in your machine, it most definitely will linger. Because not only do you, even if you wipe your machine down, your oil is going to have that tint to it. So if you're going to do it that way, you're going to have to change your oil too. But if you pre-freeze, and I pre-freeze my onions all the time, and I never get any scent carryover on my next batch. I've never had that happen. So that's how I do it.
Some fish, and it stunk so bad that she threw her oil away because she couldn't get the smell out. And so if you're doing fish, is that the same thing you would do with freeze dry it at first?
If you're having that effect, right, especially if you're raw fish, right, I don't freeze dry raw anything other than eggs. So I cook it first. If you cook it first, you should not, and then you pre-freeze it before you freeze dry it, you should be fine. I've never, in all my machines and all the batches I've done, all the food, I've never had odor carryover by pre-freezing and cooking my food first.
Okay.
But keep in mind, the way, depends on how you do it, your oil in your machine is directly exposed to the air because it's sucking, it's your vacuum, right? So if you have something that's really odorous, it could end up in your oil, and you may have to change your oil if by chance you get that that situation.
So she
Take the oil, change out the whole oil.
I mean, I wouldn't change out the oil the next batch, but if it carried over, I mean, if you wanted to change out the oil just in case, But like if you do onions, I would do maybe a soup next. And if the soup, uh, carried that onion smell, which was okay, depending if it's French onion soup, right? Um, then, maybe change it out. But, um, you know, I cherish my oil, and I don't want to spend another, $15 on oil just in case. So I would give it another cycle before I changed out my oil. And if it lingered, then change out your oil.
Yeah, she said that she'd just wait till she knew she was going to change her oil, and then she did her batch of fish and
There you
then
go.
changed her oil.
Yeah,
But
yeah, you could leave those stronger odorous things till the end of the oil cycle and then just change it out.
and going back to this thing with the Malar, I do most of my freeze drying with 2 gallon and 5 gallon buckets.
Hmm.
And so I was told as a rule of thumb that for every pound you put 1 oxy in for each pound. So my 2 gallons get it 2 and my 5 gets 5. And then if it's got like spaghetti, like you said, I give them an extra 6.
Yeah, so a 300 cc oxygen absorber will do a gallon, up to a gallon. So if you're doing gallon bags, 300 cc is great. When you get it into multiple gallons, you may have to throw another one in, another one in. If you're doing a 5 gallon bucket, you want a 2000 cc's. So there's charts online. Just Google it, and they'll tell you how much you need to do. Okay. All right. Any questions on raw versus cooked? Okay. Yes.
An online question about doing pepperoni. Can you do pepperoni? Because some pepperoni's cooked and some isn't. So
It's a hard question because pepperoni has so much fat in it. If you cook it first, now it's already cooked, obviously, but if you want to render it down and cook it, like if it's a tube of pepperoni, you could dice it up and cook it again. And um, by doing that, you're just going to add longevity to storage. Just like if something's heavily with oils, pepperoni has a lot of fat in it. So
basically, the more fat you get out of it, the longer
the more
it will
fat,
last.
the longer it'll last, and you'll know if it goes bad. So what I would do is I'd test it. I'd buy something. I would do a particular procedure, whether either cook it or just dice it up, slice it, and put it in a bag, and then come back every couple months and check it.
Okay.
That's the safe way. If you really had to have your pepperoni pizza, right, then it's going to take some time to make sure that that you get the longest life out of it as you can. Okay. All right. What time are we getting? Oh, okay. So meats and proteins, the freeze dry. I mean, we've talked about a lot of them. I put some of them up here: ground beef, ground chicken, ground sausage, rotisserie chicken from Costco. That's a popular one. However, be careful with that because take off the skin. Take the sinews out of the brown meat. Make sure that you don't have those clumps of fat on the legs. Um, uh, and you want to pat it dry and make sure you get as much fat off of it as possible. Pork chops. Do pork chops. Smith's has thin sliced pork chops and bone out, no bone. And I fry. And it was good. It was good, wasn't it? So you get.
I put in a family-sized can of cream mushroom soup and let it cook. Oh, excellent. and that cream of mushroom soup becomes a gravy over potatoes. And then I do green beans and mushrooms, and anyway, it's really yummy. But to do that, just in the crock pot with the condensed soup, no water added to it, how would that freeze dry? Just fine? So that you cook it.
I would do them separately.
You do it separately?
Mhm.
Okay, so freeze dry the condensed soup separately, and then do the pork chop separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, I make my own cream of mushroom soup. Very simple recipe. It's, you know, flour, butter, mushrooms, salt, and a little garlic salt. And so that you freeze dry, and then you just have a gravy powder, and then you do the same. You mix up, make your gravy, throw it over your rehydrated meat, and let it sit. So that for myself, that's what I would do on most meats. I think if you freeze dried a piece of steak, rehydrated it, and threw it on the grill, it doesn't turn out that well. It's not bad, but it's only as good as much moisture as you can put in it, right? The more tenderness and moisture you can get back in the steak, the better it's going to taste. So I find that if you put it in a gravy or some type of sauce, it's going to be a lot better.
So your cream of mushroom soup that you make homemade freeze dries really well.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so to finish up, you know, stew meats, you got chunks, shrimp. I make a shrimp lo mein that's really good. I use the little salad shrimps for that because they rehydrate awesome. Cooked ones, by the way. And then fish, and then we talked about the bacon. It can be done. You just have to, it's all about longevity at that point. I haven't forgotten about you vegetarians out there. So your source of protein, and here's probably the highest sources of protein on the vegetarian side. Asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and lima beans. And for on the fruit side, apricots, cranberries, kiwi, oranges, guava, and raisins. They all have about 4 grams of protein in a serving. So, and if you're a vegetarian, you probably already know that, right? So let's touch on rehydration. We've had a lot of questions about that. Am I on your way? Oh, this one?
Yeah, it was a good profile of you.
That's the nicest thing anybody said.
Isn't guava like a honey? No.
It's kind of like what's that? Yeah, yeah. Ready? Okay, so cooked meats, immerse in warm water, not hot water. I just use a warm water, and enough to cover it and let it sit for a while. And then the hydration time depends on the density of and how thick it is, right? So a lot of things that you read on freeze-dried food, it's like, wait 5 minutes, wait 10 minutes, it's ready to eat. When you're doing meat, it's dense. So you're gonna have to have patience. Put it in the fridge. If it's something you want to eat quickly, then chop them small. You know, have the smaller the better. Or if you notice in Chinese food, they don't use chopped chicken. It's all sliced really thin, like chicken chow mein. It's because, and it's against the grain. So it's easily absorbed and pulls in those flavors. Same concept. If you do a chicken chow mein or something with chicken in it, instead of dicing it to where it's 1/4-inch cubes, thin slice it, and it'll rehydrate really fast. Raw meat, put it in a container of cold water and stick it in your fridge. Treat it, when you open the package and start putting water in it, you need to treat it as if it was fresh right out of the case. If it's raw chicken, raw beef, raw seafood, you need to get it in water and back in the fridge. And hydration time also depends on, you know, shrimp goes really fast, fish goes pretty fast. And then, the spoilage time is the same as if it was fresh. So if you put raw chicken in the fridge, 3 days, like company, right? 3 days and you're out. What is it, Barb? 3 days a company or? Yeah, fishing company should only last 3 days. Okay, so any questions on rehydration? Because that's an important part, because if you freeze dry it, being able to rehydrate it is.
Well, I guess it's not a question on rehydrating, but you said that what you do is, so it pulls the water out. So the stuff that freezes on the side, that's the water that's coming out of whatever you're freeze drying, right?
Okay.
Right. So you said that you measure the water and then you split that between the bags. Well, we're always in a hurry, so we defrost it till we can pull it off the side. So how would we measure how much water we need to rehydrate what we're making when we're not patient enough to let it melt to actually measure that?
I do the same. I pull the ice off the side and put it in the bucket. I bag everything up, and then I can start my machine again, but my bucket's still there, and I just let it melt for in an hour. It's done, and then I just measure it up and then write it on the bag. 1 cup, 2 cups. So, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I bought myself a little toy, and it's a steam oven. And you can get these, they're not inexpensive, but they do add to the ability to rehydrate. So if you wanted to get an experiment, or they're good for a lot of things. They air fry, they do all kinds of stuff. But if you have fish or something delicate, breads, you can rehydrate and in this, because it is driven by steam. So it's basically it's just a steam oven. Yeah, serious. So I'll put breads in it, and it will rehydrate them. Fish, it's really good for fish, things that you can't float, right? Yeah.
Would a pressure cooker be essentially the same?
I give me an example of what?
Would a pressure cooker be essentially the same, putting steam into the food?
I'd have to think about that. It's hard to control a pressure cooker, because you have to put a cup of water in it.
Okay, I know my pressure cooker. What would that do different?
This is different because it only does steam, just like you see here. A pressure cooker, it's sitting, you got like a pool of water, usually a cup, like in an Instapot, and that's boiling. And the concentration of steam that you're going to create in a appliance like that is going to be much greater than something like this. Now, if you're doing meats or something like that, pressure cooker would probably work pretty well. I would soak it first and let it absorb naturally, and then put it in there. And like if you wanted to do a stew, I would soak my meat and then stick it in there. Or if you wanted to keep the top off of it, you could saute the meat in your broth and then put all your other stuff in it and use the saute mode on it. That would work great.
Well, just my thoughts are with the pressure cooker, it's already been cooked probably, and then when you pressure cook it, you're cooking it again, and the pressure is forcing stuff into the meat. The steam oven is just using water to like absorb everything. So it's a totally different process.
Yeah.
I think. In my mind, that's where I'm going with that. Your meat's already cooked, and then if you pressure cooker it again, it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think it's either mode would work depending on what you're doing. If you put a muffin in a pressure cooker, it's going to destroy it, right? Because it's going to just be mush. But if you put a muffin here, it'll work great. But if you put a steak in here without soaking it first, there's not enough moisture in here, but you could do it in a pressure cooker and in a sauce or just in the water that you put in to make the pressure, it would work pretty well. Okay. All right. Now, that is pretty much what we wanted to cover today. I know some people were looking at the books. I brought a bunch. They're the Harvest Right books. They are $20. And for you people online, if you want a book, you could go to my website, wasatchfreezedry.com. I will have a option out there for you to buy. They're $23 because I am including shipping on that. And then I'll get you one shipped out tomorrow. But look for that link. I haven't got it out there yet on my website, but I'll get it out there tonight. And if you wanted a cookbook, you can buy it on my website after tomorrow or starting tomorrow, or I have them here for you folks that want one now, and I can do Venmo or cash, or if you have good children that like to work, I'll take them too. Yes.
Do you know of any other really good freeze drying books that you could recommend?
You know, I have looked, and that's why I am working on one now. I have looked, and I think some of you have looked too, and I found books that people have put together on Amazon and thrown out there, but they're recipe books. They don't tell me how to freeze dry it. They just say, here's a recipe. And I got recipes, right?
Yeah, everybody's got recipes.
So I want someone to tell me if there's issues with that recipe that I need to look out for.
And that's what you're coming out with.
And that's what I'm coming out with.
So, a caveat to that, my sister thought she was doing a great thing for me for Christmas, and she found 2 freeze-dried books on Amazon. And when I sat down to read them, their idea or explanation of freeze drying was to put your food in a freezer and let it sit until it was freezer burned. That was freeze drying to them. And this is I'm serious. And so everything in that book was for jar canning or just let your food sit in a freezer until it's freezer burnt and dry. So I wouldn't waste my money. There's no good books out there.
The one recipe book, one of them that I looked out there on Amazon, didn't tell you how to freeze dry, but it assumed that you had freeze dry food and it wanted you to make a recipe with it. Well, I don't need that, right? Because it'll say, it had a regular, I think it was a hamburger casserole, and it said, put in or add 2 cups of freeze-dried hamburger. And it's like, well, that doesn't help me at all, right? So this book is really good. And it was done by Harvest Right, but it goes through and tells you a lot of the different foods you can do, how to do them. There's a lot of helpful hints and things. So, yeah, look at them. They kind of show you how to do your trays and different things like that. So I actually learned a lot myself just kind of going through this and reading it and going, okay, well, there's a good idea and that's a good idea. My cookbook will actually go a little bit deeper, but if you wanted a cookbook to help you understand certain things, then this is probably the best one on the market right now.
When is yours coming out, Darren?
Oh, I don't know. I'm working on it. I know my secretary over there takes all my notes on my other classes. It keeps after me. So I'm working on it. So yes. Yes, definitely. We will definitely, when it's available, I will definitely let everybody know. I'll call you. All right. Well, thank you for coming. We're a little bit late, but I appreciate all of your questions, and I hope you learned something today. I'll post a lot of the things I try to get out there on my Facebook page, so you can check it every now and then. And if there's anything that you have questions about, I have a card up here you can take, and you can text me anytime and say, I'm doing this, that, and the other, I'm having problems, or my machine's not working right. Give us a call. We'll come out. We'll get you fixed up and going.
We don't have Facebook. We don't look at
Can we get you some other way?
My website? Yeah, website. Yep. Yeah. Oh, nothing? Okay, well, thank you for coming. Drive home safe.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just so you know, that 175 is an awesome deal. He does a great job on setting it up, bringing it to you. The hassle takes it all out. So
thank you.
So, yeah. All right. Thank you.
They have a